I still remember Dad's calloused hands as he tucked us into bed every night. Jenna and I were only 8 years old when Mom left, but Dad never let us feel like we were missing anything. He worked 3 jobs: morning shift at the factory, afternoon deliveries, and weekend construction. His eyes were always tired, but they lit up whenever we showed him our report cards or science projects. "You girls are going to change the world," he'd whisper, kissing our foreheads. "Just promise me you'll always have each other's backs." Jenna was the talker, the one who could charm teachers into giving her extra credit. I was the thinker, always taking apart old computers Dad brought home from garage sales. We were different, but we were a team. Dad made sure of that. Every night, he'd sit between our beds and tell us stories about inventors and entrepreneurs. "Smart work beats hard work," he'd say. But the smartest work is when you combine both with integrity. Looking back, I realized Dad was planting seeds. He wanted us to dream bigger than his factory shifts and weekend repairs. He wanted us to build something together. And for the longest time, that's exactly what we did. The day we turned 19, Dad handed us each envelope. Inside were college acceptance letters he'd been hiding for weeks, along with a check that made my hands shake. $60,000, he said quietly. "Each. I've been saving since you were babies." Jenna's eyes filled with tears. I couldn't speak. We knew he'd sacrificed everything for this moment. The man who wore the same 3 shirts to work had somehow saved $120,000 for our education. But Jenna and I exchanged a look. We'd been talking about this for months. The tech idea I'd been developing in our garage, the business plan we'd sketched on napkins during late-night study sessions. "Dad," I said carefully, "what if we used this money differently?" His eyebrows shot up. Jenna jumped in with her sales pitch about starting a company, about building something together. Dad listened without interrupting, that thoughtful expression he got when he was really considering something. Finally, he smiled. "Your grandfather would roll over in his grave. But your old man? I'm proud you girls want to bet on yourselves." 3 weeks later, we filed the paperwork for HailTech. Dad was our first investor, cheerleader, and biggest believer, all rolled into one. Our first office was Dad's garage. I spent 18-hour days coding while Jenna handled everything else, talking to potential clients, designing our website, managing our social media. She had this natural gift for making people believe in our vision, even when we barely had a working prototype. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday. My algorithm finally worked perfectly, processing data faster than anything on the market. I called Jenna, who was at a coffee shop trying to convince a potential client to give us a chance. "It's working," I whispered into the phone. "Jenna, it's actually working." She screamed so loud that everyone in the coffee shop turned to stare. That client signed with us the next day. Within 6 months, we had 12 clients. Within a year, we had 50. Tech blogs started writing about the sister duo revolutionizing data processing. Investors began calling. Jenna thrived in the spotlight, giving interviews and speaking at conferences. I preferred staying behind the scenes, improving our technology. By our 3rd year, HailTech was valued at over $100 million. We were on magazine covers. Jenna was invited to exclusive events. I was happy just seeing our technology help businesses operate more efficiently. Dad was so proud, he kept every newspaper clipping in a scrapbook. Success changed Jenna in ways I didn't see coming. While I still lived in the same modest apartment near our office, she bought a mansion in the hills. My closet had the same jeans and sweaters I'd worn in college. Hers overflowed with designer everything. "We earned this, Cassie," she'd say whenever I questioned a purchase. Dad worked himself to death so we could live differently. At first, I didn't mind. Our company was thriving, and Jenna's lifestyle seemed to motivate her. She worked harder to maintain her image, which meant more clients and more success for HailTech. But then I started noticing things. Credit card statements left on her desk showed astronomical balances. She'd get calls during meetings that made her step outside, speaking in hushed, worried tones. Her assistant mentioned that Jenna had started taking advances on her salary. I tried bringing it up gently. "Hey, if you need anything." "I'm fine," she'd snap, then immediately soften. "Sorry, I'm just stressed about the Morrison account." I wanted to believe her. Jenna had always been the responsible one when it came to our business finances. She'd set up systems that protected our company funds from any personal spending. So I trusted her judgment and focused on what I did best, making our technology even better. The first real warning sign came from our accountant, Marcus. He called me directly, which was unusual since Jenna handled all financial communications. "Cassie, I need to discuss something sensitive with you," he said. "It's about Jenna's personal accounts." My stomach dropped. Marcus explained that Jenna had been borrowing against her future earnings from HailTech. She'd taken out multiple loans, each one larger than the last. The collateral? Her shares in our company. "How much?" I asked, "including interest and penalties?" "About $4 million. I hung up and sat in my office for an hour, staring at the code on my screen without really seeing it. $4 million. That was almost everything Jenna had earned from HailTech over 3 years. When she walked into my office that evening, designer bag in hand and diamond earrings catching the light, I couldn't reconcile this image with what Marcus had told me. "We need to talk," I said. "About what?" "Your debt." The color drained from her face. For a moment, the confident, polished exterior cracked, and I saw my sister, scared, embarrassed, and trapped. "It's not as bad as it sounds," she whispered. But we both knew it was worse. 2 weeks later, an email appeared in my inbox that changed everything. The sender was anonymous. The subject line simply, "You need to know." Attached was a document that made my blood run cold. It was a draft contract for the sale of HailTech to Meridian Corp for $150 million. The document showed Jenna as the primary contact and included signatures from both of us. Except I'd never seen this contract before. I'd never signed anything. My hands shook as I examined the signature. It looked like mine, the same loops in my C, the same slant to my letters. But I knew I hadn't written it because I would never agree to sell our company without discussing it first. I called Jenna immediately. "Hey, what's up?" she answered, sounding rushed. "We need to meet. Now." "I'm actually in the middle of." "Jenna? Now." An hour later, we sat in our conference room. I slid the printed contract across the table. Her face went white. "Where did you get this?" she whispered. "Someone sent it to me." "Is it real?" She opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. "I can explain." "You tried to sell our company without telling me?" Tears filled her eyes. "I was going to tell you, I just needed to handle my debt situation first." "By selling everything we built?" "It's not forever. I had a plan." "A plan that involved forging my signature?" That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Dad's words, "Always have each other's backs." How had we gotten so far from that promise? I drove to the office at 3 a.m. and sat in the dark, looking at the code that had started everything. 3 years of late nights, of problem solving, of building something revolutionary. And Jenna had been ready to sell it all to cover her shopping addiction. But as I reviewed the contract more carefully, I noticed something. The sale included transfer of all intellectual property rights, all patents, all source code. Everything that made HailTech valuable would belong to Meridian Corp. Then I remembered something that made me smile for the first time in days. When we'd first developed our core technology, I'd been paranoid about protecting it. So I'd implemented a multi-layer security system. The most important parts of our algorithm were encrypted with a key that only I knew. It was a 256-character alphanumeric code that I'd memorized and never written down anywhere. Without that key, our technology was essentially worthless. Meridian Corp would be buying an empty shell. I pulled up the contract again and searched for any mention of the encryption key. Nothing. Jenna had no idea it existed because I'd implemented it during one of her PR trips to New York. Suddenly, I wasn't angry anymore. I was curious to see how this would play out. The next few days, I watched Jenna carefully. She was nervous, checking her phone constantly and taking mysterious calls. She thought she was being subtle, but I knew my sister too well. On Thursday, I pretended to leave early for a dentist appointment. Instead, I parked around the corner and walked back to our building. Through the window, I could see Jenna in my office, frantically searching through my desk drawers. My computer was password protected, but she was trying anyway. I watched her attempt various combinations: my birthday, Dad's birthday, the day we founded HailTech. She was looking for the encryption key, I'd installed a silent security app on all our computers months ago after a client mentioned corporate espionage concerns. Every keystroke was logged, every search recorded. I had evidence of everything Jenna was doing, but I didn't confront her, not yet. Instead, I went home and called my lawyer, Sarah Chen. We'd used her to set up HailTech's legal structure, and I trusted her completely. Sarah, I need to know my options if I want to dissolve a business partnership. That's a big step, Cassie. What's going on? I told her everything. The debt, the forged signature, the attempted sale. Sarah listened without interrupting. You have grounds for fraud charges, she said finally. But are you sure you want to go nuclear? I thought about Dad, about integrity, about trust. What's the cleanest way to protect myself and my work? Sarah worked fast. Within 48 hours, she'd prepared a complete partnership dissolution agreement. Since Jenna and I owned HailTech 50-50, I could force a sale and split of all assets. More importantly, I could retain full ownership of any intellectual property I'd developed independently. The encryption key fell into that category. I'd created it alone on my personal computer using my own research. Legally, it belonged to me. But I wanted to give Jenna one last chance to be honest. I walked into her office on Monday morning with 2 cups of coffee, her favorite vanilla latte with extra foam. I'd been thinking about our conversation, I said carefully. About the debt, about possible solutions. Hope flickered in her eyes. Really? Maybe selling isn't the worst idea, but we'd need to do it right. Full transparency with the CIT buyers, proper documentation of all our intellectual property. She nodded eagerly. Of course, absolutely. They'd need access to everything. Source code, algorithms, encryption keys. A tiny pause. Encryption keys? The security protocols I implemented last year. Remember, you said I was being paranoid, but they're actually crucial for the transfer process. Jenna's smile faltered slightly. Right, those. Do you know where I stored the master key? Another pause, longer this time. In your office somewhere? I stood up, leaving my coffee untouched. No, Jenna, I don't. That afternoon, I met with Meridian Corp's representatives myself. They were surprised to see me instead of Jenna, but I introduced myself as the co-founder and chief technology officer. We're very excited about acquiring HailTech, said their lead negotiator, a sharp woman named Patricia Moore. Your sister has been extremely helpful in the preliminary discussions. I'm sure she has. I wanted to clarify some technical details about our core algorithm. For the next hour, I explained the intricacies of our technology. Patricia's team took notes furiously. When I mentioned the encryption protocols, their chief technical officer leaned forward. This security system, he said, it's quite sophisticated. How do we ensure full access post-acquisition? That's where it gets complicated, I replied. The master encryption key exists only in one place. And unfortunately, it's not something that can be transferred as part of any sale agreement my sister might have negotiated. The room went quiet. Why not? Patricia asked. Because I developed it independently, before our current partnership agreements were finalized. Legally, it's my individual intellectual property. Patricia's team exchanged glances. Without that key, they'd be buying a company whose most valuable asset was essentially locked away. We'll need to discuss this development, Patricia said carefully. Of course. Take your time. I left the meeting knowing Jenna's deal was dead in the water. When I got back to the office, Jenna was waiting in my office, pacing like a caged animal. They called, she said the moment I walked in. Meridian Corp. They want to renegotiate terms because of some technical complications. Really? What kind of complications? She stared at me for a long moment. You know, don't you? Know what? About the sale. About everything. I sat down at my desk and pulled out the printed contract. You mean about how you tried to sell our company without my knowledge? How you forged my signature? How you were planning to take the money and run? Tears started flowing down her cheeks. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Jenna? I was desperate. The creditors were threatening to sue. I thought if I could just pay everything off, we could start fresh. With whose company? Ours. It would still be ours. I was going to split the money. After lying to me, after forging legal documents, after breaking every promise we made to Dad about having each other's backs. She collapsed into the chair across from my desk. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this. I opened my laptop and pulled up the partnership dissolution documents Sarah had prepared. "I'm buying you out," I said quietly. "Fair market value for your shares minus your debts to the company." "Cassie, please." "It's done, Jenna. I've already filed the paperwork." The next 2 weeks were a blur of legal meetings and financial calculations. Sarah handled most of the details, but I had to make one crucial decision: what to do about the fraud. "You have enough evidence to press criminal charges," Sarah explained. "The forged signature alone is a felony." What would happen to her? Probably jail time. Definitely a criminal record that would make it impossible for her to work in business again. I thought about Dad, about the values he'd tried to instill in us, about the sister who used to stay up all night helping me debug code when we were just starting out. No charges, I decided, just the civil dissolution. Sarah nodded. "You're being more generous than she deserves." Maybe, but Dad had taught us to be better than our worst moments, even if Jenna had forgotten that lesson. The final settlement gave me full ownership of HailTech, including all technology and intellectual property. Jenna received enough money to pay off her debts and have a small cushion, but nothing close to what she would have gotten from the Meridian deal. On her last day at the office, I found an envelope on my desk. Inside was a letter in Jenna's handwriting. "Cassie, I know sorry isn't enough. I know I broke something that can't be fixed. But please know that losing your trust hurts more than losing the company. Dad would be ashamed of me. I'm ashamed of me. I hope someday you can forgive me, even if I can't forgive myself." I never responded to that letter. With Jenna gone, I had to rebuild HailTech from the ground up. Half our staff had been hired by Jenna, and I wasn't sure where their loyalties lay. Our clients were confused about the sudden changes in leadership. Competitors were circling, sensing weakness. But I had something they didn't: the technology that made HailTech special and the encryption key that protected it. I hired new staff carefully, focusing on people who shared my values rather than just technical skills. I reached out to our clients personally, explaining the transition and reassuring them about service continuity. Most importantly, I started working on the next generation of our algorithm. If Jenna wanted to play games with our shared legacy, I'd build something entirely new. The new technology was everything our original algorithm was, but faster, more efficient, and more secure. I called it HailTech 2.0, and it was entirely mine. 6 months after Jenna left, we launched the new system. The response was overwhelming. Tech blogs called it revolutionary. Clients saw immediate improvements in processing speed and data security. New customers started calling faster than I could handle. Within a year, HailTech 2.0 had not only replaced our lost revenue, but doubled it. I hired more staff, moved to a bigger office, and started exploring international markets. Every success felt like vindication, not just of my technical skills, but of my choice to prioritize integrity over quick profits. Meanwhile, Jenna struggled. I heard about it through mutual friends and industry contacts, how she tried to start her own consulting firm, how clients had pulled out once they learned about her departure from HailTech, how she'd had to move back to a small apartment. Part of me felt sorry for her. But a bigger part of me remembered the forged signature, the secret negotiations, the betrayal of everything we'd built together. She tried reaching out a few times. Text messages asking how I was doing, emails suggesting we meet for coffee, even a handwritten letter that arrived at my office. I didn't respond to any of them. Sarah advised me to maintain no contact. "She created this situation," she reminded me. "You don't owe her anything." But late at night, when I was alone in the office working on code, I sometimes thought about the sister who used to bring me sandwiches during all-nighters, the one who'd believed in my crazy ideas when no one else would. The one who'd cried with happiness when we got our first client. That sister felt like a stranger now. 3 years passed. HailTech grew into one of the most respected data processing companies in the industry. I spoke at conferences, was featured on magazine covers, and won awards for innovation and ethical business practices. Every success felt hollow without someone to share it with. Then, on a rainy Tuesday morning, Jenna showed up at my office. I was reviewing quarterly reports when my assistant, Maria, knocked on my door. "There's someone here to see you," she said carefully. "She says she's your sister." My heart stopped. "Send her in." Jenna looked different. Thinner, older, worn down by 3 years of consequences. Her clothes were nice but not designer. Her hair was shorter, simpler. The confidence that had once defined her was gone. "Hi, Cassie." "Jenna." We stared at each other for a long moment. I gestured to the chair across from my desk, the same chair where she'd collapsed when I'd confronted her about the sale. "You look good," she said quietly. "Successful. What do you want?" "To apologize. Really apologize. Not just sorry I got caught apologize." I waited. I was drowning, she continued. In debt, in pressure, in this idea that I had to maintain a certain image. And instead of asking for help, instead of being honest with you, I tried to take the easy way out. By selling our company. By betraying everything Dad taught us. That got my attention. We'd never talked about Dad in the context of what happened. "He would have hated what I did," she whispered. "The lying, the forging, the breaking up our partnership. Everything he worked for, everything he sacrificed, and I threw it away for designer handbags." Tears were streaming down her face now. Real tears, not the manipulative crying I'd seen the day I confronted her. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said. "I just needed you to know that I understand what I did. I understand what I lost." We talked for 2 hours. Jenna told me about the past 3 years, the failed business ventures, the damaged reputation, the slow process of learning to live within her means. She'd taken a job at a small marketing firm, making a fraction of what she'd earned at HailTech. "It's humbling," she admitted, "but also clarifying. I remember why I loved the work itself, not just the lifestyle it provided." I told her about HailTech's growth, about the new technology, about the success we'd achieved. But I also talked about the loneliness, about missing having a partner who understood the vision from the beginning. "I don't trust you," I said finally. "I want to, but I don't." She nodded. "I wouldn't trust me either. If we're going to have any relationship, personal or professional, you'd have to earn it back. Slowly, with actions, not words." "I understand. I'm talking about starting over completely. You'd be entry-level, with zero guarantee of advancement. You'd have to prove yourself to me and to everyone else who remembers what happened." "I'll do whatever it takes." I studied her face, looking for any sign of the entitlement or desperation that had driven her original betrayal. Instead, I saw something I hadn't seen in years: humility. "There's an opening in our client services department," I said carefully. "It's not glamorous work. It's not well paid, and everyone will know exactly who you are and why you're there." "When can I start?" Jenna's return to HailTech was awkward for everyone. The staff who remembered her treated her with professional politeness but obvious wariness. New employees were confused about why the boss's sister was doing entry-level customer service work. But Jenna threw herself into the job with a dedication I hadn't seen since our early days. She arrived first every morning and left last every evening. She took on the difficult clients, the complex problems, the thankless tasks that everyone else avoided. Slowly, very slowly, people began to warm up to her. She helped solve a major client crisis that had stumped our senior team. She identified a pattern in customer complaints that led to a significant improvement in our software. She worked weekends without being asked, not to impress anyone, but because the work needed to be done. 6 months later, her supervisor recommended her for a promotion to senior client specialist. I reviewed the recommendation carefully, knowing that everyone would be watching my decision. "She's earned it," her supervisor told me. I was skeptical at first, but she's proven herself. I approved the promotion, but I made it clear to Jenna that she'd have to keep earning her place every single day. "I know," she said, "and thank you for the chance. Don't thank me yet. Thank me in 5 years if you're still here and still proving yourself." 2 more years passed. Jenna continued to excel in her role, eventually becoming one of our most trusted client relationship managers. She developed new protocols for customer onboarding, created training materials for junior staff, and even started speaking at industry conferences about customer service excellence. The media loved the story of the disgraced co-founder working her way back up through entry-level positions. Jenna handled the attention gracefully, always redirecting credit to the team and emphasizing the lessons she'd learned about humility and hard work. More importantly, our personal relationship began to heal. We started having lunch together occasionally, talking about work and life and everything except the elephant in the room. We celebrated small victories and supported each other through challenges. But I never forgot the lesson of that one small detail, the encryption key that saved everything I'd built. Trust, once broken, might be repaired, but it would never be quite the same. One evening, as we were both working late, Jenna knocked on my office door. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Sure. The encryption key, the one that stopped the Meridian sale. Did you always have that, or did you create it after you found out about my plans?" I smiled. "I've had it since 6 months after we launched. Call it paranoia, but I wanted to protect our core technology. So even if I'd been honest, even if I'd asked for your permission to sell, the deal still wouldn't have worked. Not without my cooperation, no." She laughed, a sound that was equal parts irony and relief. All that scheming and betrayal, and it was doomed from the start. Dad always said the truth has a way of protecting itself. 5 years after Jenna's return, HailTech went public. Our IPO was one of the most successful tech offerings of the year, valuing the company at over $500 million. As the founder and CEO, I retained majority control, but I also created an employee stock program that rewarded everyone who'd helped build our success. Jenna, now a vice president of client relations, received shares worth several $1 million. Not the $75 million she would have gotten from the original Meridian deal, but more than enough to secure her future. At the IPO celebration party, she pulled me aside. "I know I can never fully make up for what I did," she said, "but I want you to know that these 5 years earning my way back have been the most meaningful of my life." "Why?" "Because everything I have now, I actually earned. The money, the position, the respect, it's all real this time." I looked around the party, at the employees celebrating their success, at the clients who'd become partners, at the company we'd built on a foundation of integrity and innovation. "Dad would be proud of both of us," I said. For the first time in 8 years, I meant it completely. Today, HailTech is valued at over $1 billion. We've expanded internationally, acquired several smaller companies, and continue to innovate in data processing and security. I still have that encryption key memorized, though it's no longer the single point of failure it once was. Jenna runs our entire customer experience division and is widely respected in the industry. She speaks honestly about her mistakes and the lessons she learned, inspiring other executives to prioritize ethics over short-term gains. We work well together now, but our relationship is different than it was before. There's a professional respect that didn't exist when we were young entrepreneurs flying by the seat of our pants. There's also a wariness, a careful distance that protects us both from repeating past mistakes. Sometimes I wonder, what would have happened if Jenna had succeeded in selling HailTech to Meridian Corp? Would she have been happy with her $75 million? Would she have learned the same lessons about integrity and hard work? Would we ever have found our way back to each other? But then I remember that one small detail, the encryption key that represented everything Dad taught us about protecting what matters most. It wasn't just a security protocol. It was a reminder that real value can't be stolen, forged, or sold. It has to be earned. Last month, Jenna and I visited Dad's grave together for the first time since his funeral 8 years ago. We brought flowers and the latest magazine article about HailTech's innovative workplace culture. "Hey, Dad," Jenna said quietly. "We figured it out. Finally." I knelt down and placed my hand on his headstone. It took longer than it should have, but we got there. We stood in comfortable silence for a while, remembering the man who'd worked 3 jobs so we could chase our dreams. The man who'd taught us that integrity mattered more than profits, that family mattered more than fame, that hard work combined with smart work could change the world. As we walked back to our cars, Jenna asked, "Do you think he knew about the encryption key, about how it would save everything?" "I think he knew that if he raised us right, we'd find a way to protect what mattered most, even from each other, especially from each other." We hugged goodbye in the parking lot, something we'd only recently started doing again. It wasn't the easy, unconscious affection we'd shared as children, but it was real, it was earned, and maybe that made it more valuable than what we'd had before. The The story of HailTech became a business school case study about partnership disputes, intellectual property protection, and corporate ethics. Students analyze our decisions, debate our choices, and learn about the importance of legal safeguards in business relationships. I'm often asked to speak about the experience, particularly about how we rebuilt trust after such a fundamental betrayal. My advice is always the same. Trust is earned through consistency over time, not through grand gestures or eloquent apologies. Jenna speaks at these events too, sharing her perspective on how success without ethics is ultimately hollow. She talks about the cost of betrayal, not just to relationships, but to one's own sense of self-worth and integrity. Together, we've created a company culture that prioritizes honesty, even when it's difficult. We have systems in place to prevent any single person from making decisions that could jeopardize the company or its employees. We've learned from our mistakes and built something stronger because of them. But the most important lesson isn't about business or technology or legal protections. It's about the fact that some details, the small, seemingly insignificant choices we make about how to treat each other, can determine the entire trajectory of our lives. That encryption key saved HailTech, but our father's lessons about integrity saved our family. Today, as I sit in my office reviewing plans for our next product launch, I can see Jenna through the glass wall, leading a meeting with potential clients from Europe. She's confident but not arrogant, persuasive but not manipulative. She's become the leader she always had the potential to be. Once she learned that real leadership requires serving others rather than serving yourself. The irony isn't lost on me that Jenna's betrayal ultimately made both of us stronger. If she'd succeeded in selling HailTech to Meridian Corp, we both would have been rich, but hollow. We'd have lost the company that connected us to our father's legacy and to each other. Instead, that one small detail, a 256-character encryption key that existed only in my memory, forced us both to confront who we really were and who we wanted to become. The key is still there, still protecting our most valuable algorithms. But I've added layers of security and redundancy, ensuring that HailTech's future doesn't depend on any single person or decision. We've learned to trust but verify, to hope but protect, to forgive but remember. As I watch Jenna shake hands with the European clients, closing what looks like a major deal, I feel something I haven't felt in years, the uncomplicated joy of sharing success with family. Dad was right. We did change the world, just not in the way any of us expected. We changed it by learning that some things, integrity, family, the trust we place in each other, are worth more than any amount of money. And sometimes those things are protected by the smallest details.